I'm just going to give it a second to connect to all the platforms. So just give me a moment here. Make sure that we're live everywhere. Okay, that's good. And I'm just going to refresh this. Too many things going on with technology, I tell you. Okay, 1 second. I saw before it was loading. I think we're good now. Okay, we're live everywhere officially, and just gonna hook it up to Instagram here. Okay, guys, perfect. Sorry about that. Sorry for that little delay. Just trying to connect to all the different platforms. I'm super excited to talk about today's topic. If you're able to join in live right now, let me know wherever you're watching from. Let me know in the comments below. And as we go along with today's talk, if you have any questions or anything else in regards to this topic, in regards to menopause in general, please ask me. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have and do future trainings on it as well. So if you're here today, it's because you're interested, first of all, in training, exercise, menopause, right? And you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. And today I want to address something that I think is causing a lot of confusion in the health and wellness space. And honestly, a lot of unnecessary harm when it comes to this, especially for women in perimenopause and menopause. There's this narrative that's spreading through the wellness space right now that goes something like this. If you're, in perimenopause or menopause, you should avoid high intensity exercise because it's going to increase cortisol. It works against your hormones. You should just slow down. You should do, just stick to getting your steps in, do yoga, go for walks, avoid anything that's going to get your heart rate up too high and stress out your body. And I want to be very, very direct about this. That advice is extremely incomplete. And for a lot of women, especially the ones who have been active their whole lives, following that type of advice can actually make things worse, not better. And there's also the other side of it, right? So there's that side that's very much like focusing on fear mongering around like cortisol, intensity, all that stuff. And then the other side of it is there's also women in this stage who are still hammering themselves through, like they're going to 5 high intensity workouts a week, whether that's their own workouts that they're doing at home, HIIT style workouts or Orange Theory, boot camp style workouts. And they're wondering why their body is holding on to fat, why they're having trouble recovering. They feel like, just lethargic, achy, they're losing muscles. And the answer to that is also probably not what you think. So if like you have the one camp of people, right? The one category of women who are like avoiding high intensity because it's dangerous for their hormones, it's bad for cortisol. And then you have the other category, which is the woman who refuses to slow down, right? And she's been intense with her workouts her whole life. It worked until it hasn't worked now. So both of these categories are operating on incomplete information. So today that's what I'm here for. I want to give you like the full picture. And quick intro for anybody new. If you're watching, if I'm looking this way, it's because I'm paying attention to those who are tuning in on Instagram. And for those of you who are watching on the other platforms, if you are new here to my page, I'm Alexis Giurleo. I'm a biologist and founder of Flexus Fitness. And I've spent over the last decade working with high-performing women navigating perimenopause or postmenopause. And what I do is help them understand not just what their body needs, but why it needs that and how to get the most out of their unique biology and what's been changing and how to go about it. So let's get into the exercise piece today. So first off, I always like to start with the why, because like I say in every one of these trainings is like understanding the why behind it allows you to implement it learn how to implement it for you individually, right? So when it comes to like the biology side of things, so the reason why we still want to focus on some intensity, especially if you're, in your mid 30s and beyond, this is where like a lot of the fear mongering is happening, right? So there's a lot of talk of, like your hormones, like your body is more stressed out during perimenopause, postmenopause, which is absolutely true. Your body is in a more stressed out state due to the dip in hormones. And also at the same time, as much as that's happening, as estrogen starts to decline during perimenopause, your body also becomes more prone to losing muscle, right? So it's not just losing muscle, but it's also the type of muscle fibers. So you have like your slow twitch muscle fibers and you have your fast twitch muscle fibers. And these, the fast twitch ones are responsible for power, speed, explosiveness, and also help with just overall metabolic flexibility. So these types of fibers, the fast twitch ones, are the most metabolically active fibers in your body. And they not only do they influence how well like you could, again, speed and respond to explosive movement, but also they influence how efficiently your body is using glucose, how it's using energy, how resilient your metabolism is to the hormonal changes that are happening, and how your body is responding to things like carbs, sugars, etc. So the thing that nobody is talking about right now is, there's a lot of people talking about how like you want to focus on steady state cardio and like walks and be gentle and focus on like Pilates and stuff like that. And those types of movement don't help maintain the fast twitch muscle fibers. Walking doesn't help maintain them. Yoga doesn't help maintain them. The only thing that helps maintain fast twitch muscle fibers is asking your body to produce power and effort. And there's ways of doing that. And if you're there and you're saying right now and you're like, Alexis, like I can't do anything with impact. I have osteoporosis. I want to be careful, or like I have knee injuries. Don't worry, I'm going to get to that. But there's ways through specifically strength training that takes your muscle near to failure through short bursts of high intensity efforts. Now, if you're somebody like who has been told to remove intensity from your training and watch how like you're stressing your body out, and even if you've done this, even with the best intentions, you are accelerating the loss of the very fibers that protect your metabolism, your body composition, and ultimately your long-term health, your long-term physical resilience. So you're not protecting your body by removing that. You're just leaving it without that stimulus that your body genuinely needs at this point. And that's where, like, if you have removed all intensity, that's not protecting your body, your hormones. It's just removing the exact stimulus that your body needs to maintain these muscle fibers, right? And again, these muscle fibers are most important for your metabolic health. So the answer to this is not less intensity, but it's just a different type of intensity, a smarter way of spreading out the intensity and making sure, most importantly, that you have the recovery to support it. If there's one thing, especially if you're an active woman, you've been active your whole life, you enjoy activity, you enjoy, like it's just a part of you. If you've been told, oh, like these types of workouts, like let's say, I'm just going to say running, because like there's a lot of runners that come to us too. Not everybody, but like some endurance athletes come to us and they're like, I've been told that like endurance activities are bad for me and that I should slow down. It's not that they're bad for you. It's just your body. We have to really focus on the recovery aspect. So again, if you're somebody who like genuinely enjoys intense activities, it's not to say that you have to slow down at this point. It's just we really want to focus on the recovery process more. So I'm going to get to that in a bit, but I just wanted to mention here. And then there's the other side of it, right? So the woman who's doing too much intensity without sufficient recovery. So this is the woman who, again, maybe somebody who's doing like HIIT every day or working out every day, doing strength every day, or going to different workout classes that are very, very high intensity, getting that sweat, feeling productive after the workout, but she's not getting the benefit of those fast twitch muscle fibers either. And the reason is because when intensity is chronically high without adequate recovery, then your cortisol is going to stay elevated. And this is the part that, again, there's a nuance here, right? So you have your HPA axis, which is basically your brain to stress hormone communication system. So basically this, and I did a whole other talk about this a couple weeks ago. So if you're interested in learning more about like how menopause changes your stress response, your nervous system, all that, and why, again, your training load and recovery becomes so much more important in terms of how you're going about it and how you're being intentional about it, let me know and I could link that training for you. But basically your system does become more hypersensitive, right? So your body stops has more trouble distinguishing between a physical, like a productive training stress versus a threat. And it responds the same way it would respond to a perceived threat, right? So like it starts to conserve energy, it holds on to fat, it actually breaks down muscle instead of, building it, and it starts to resist change. So this is where, if a woman is hammering herself, like with intensity 5 days a week, she's she's sending a signal to her body that her body can't receive clearly and can't recover from properly. So the stimulus is there, the intensity is there, but the recovery system, the recovery infrastructure isn't there, and it's not able to respond to that stimulus. So without recovery, intensity is just a stressor on your body. And that's when people run into trouble when it comes to higher intensity workouts. So think of it like, easiest way of thinking about it is intensity without sufficient recovery is just stress. And when a body is under chronic stress, it's not going to feel safe enough to build muscle. So it's going to end up resisting that change, breaking muscle down, resisting fat loss. And it just wants to protect itself and conserve, right? So that means like the more intensity without enough recovery, it just ends up making things worse, not better. So what does it look like, right, to have that good intensity, a good balance, the right dose, let's say the right dose. So when it comes to working with your biology at this point, instead of against it, when it comes to this, there's two things. You want to focus on purposeful strength training, and you also want to focus on sprint interval training. I've spoken about this before, but I'm going to dive into this a bit deeper here. What we call SIT. So purposeful strength training is not a cardio circuit with light weights, where you're just going like round and round and lifting like 3 to 5 pound weights. It's not that. It's progressive resistance training that takes your muscle close to failure. And this is really, really key. And if you don't have weights at home and you're just getting into strength training, like again, there's different levels to this, right? But like if you don't have weights at home, you're getting back into strength training, you're getting back into exercise, you could do a lot with your body. You could do a lot with even resistance bands to push your muscle close to failure. But the idea is the last few reps are genuinely challenging. So if you're just like, moving through a movement mindlessly and you're not actually feeling that muscle come to failure, to exhaustion, you're not sending much of a signal to your body. So ultimately, this sends a signal to your body that it needs to maintain, it needs to keep building muscle. And it's the most important training input for women in perimenopause and postmenopause. And all you really need is 2 to 3 well-designed sessions per week. Around 30 minutes, that's enough. If you don't even have that amount of time, even 2 to 3 sessions, 15 minutes. There's a lot going on in my life right now, different transitions, a move. So like there's a lot right now. And I could tell you, I've been sticking to like minimum 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week, around 20 minutes. And my body feels it. I feel it. So it doesn't take much as long as it's programmed properly. You don't need longer. You don't need more. You just need better. So that's the first thing, is the purposeful strength training. Now, the second thing is sprint interval training. That's the other piece of this. And this is the one where most women are either avoiding entirely, like we talked about before, right? They're scared to add any intensity. They're avoiding it entirely, or they're doing too much of it in the wrong format. So sprint interval training is not 45 minutes of sustained high intensity effort. It's designed to be very short with longer recovery. So you have like things like HIIT, right? Or Tabata, like it's like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off, whatever the case. But the sprint interval training is designed to be like 10 to 30 second bursts of effort, and like genuine all out effort, like 9 on 10 effort, followed by full recovery before the next effort. So there's different ways of going about it. You could do, if you are able to, let's say, run to sprint, you could do hill sprints, you could do sprints on a bike, you could do it on an elliptical, you could do even sled pushes, rowing intervals. And the effort window, again, is designed to be very, very short, but the recovery between your efforts are full and give you time to actually recover properly. So just for context, for the women that we work with, we keep these about 20 minutes long. So they're getting like 5, maybe 6 sprints in between. And like, again, you should feel like gassed out after the sprint. Like it's very intense effort, and you need that like 2.5 minute recovery afterwards. So this format is specifically like the strength training is key for, again, fast twitch muscle fibers, but the sprint interval training is also formatted specifically to maintain those fast twitch muscle fibers. And again, it does it in a way where it's not chronically elevating your cortisol, because those efforts are so short. And the recovery is long enough that your body has time to buffer out that that like training stress. So your HPA axis that we were talking about before doesn't go into stress mode, and it doesn't stay in that heightened state for hours later on. So you're still getting that stimulus that we want without the systemic stress load. Now, when it comes to the sprint interval training, a lot of women ask, like, okay, cool, like how often should I do that? Honestly, 1 to 2 sessions a week is more than enough. Most of the women that we work with do 1 just because they're doing other activities. And again, we really want to prioritize the strength, so we throw it in like after strength workout or throughout the week. But 1 to 2 is enough alongside your strength training. You don't want to be doing that every single day. You don't want to be doing back to back. 1 to 2 done with enough full effort and full recovery between the efforts is perfect. Now, when you're comparing that to like 45 minutes of sustained high intensity, high rate, high heart rate, boot camp style type of training, that type of workout puts your body in a moderate state of stress, and it keeps your body in that moderate state of stress afterwards. So that's really the difference, is that format gives you a stress response that's elevated, but without that targeted stimulus that we're really looking for. And that actually helps to maintain the fast twitch muscle fibers. So for women in perimenopause, and like especially, and even if you're somebody who's not there yet, like let's say you're in your 30s, like this is also applicable to you, but especially if you're going through the hormonal changes, your body, things are a bit wonky right now, you're post-menopause, there is that thinner hormonal stress buffer. So that's already a net negative. So that's why it's not that intensity is bad at this point, but it's the format of intensity that matters most and can either be the right or the wrong tool for your biology at this point. Now, when it comes to the recovery piece, so again, recovery isn't something that you get as a reward. Recovery is what earns the right to intensity. This is something that I've had to wrap my brain around, and honestly, I have to remind myself of very often. But that's, if there's one thing I want you to keep in mind after today's talk, is recovery is not what you do when you're tired. It's not a reward of working hard. It's not a rest day that you've earned after a tough week. Recovery is the work. It's the infrastructure that makes all the intensity possible. It is what you do. It is what your body needs in place before intensity actually produces the results rather than stress. So this is something where a lot of the women that we work with, a lot of them who come to us, it's not like they're inactive. Like, these are women who have been active their whole lives. They love it. They've been putting in a lot of effort. And this is something that takes time to get more comfortable with, of the idea of like, hey, it's not just about powering through these workouts and going like crazy all the time, but we actually want to make sure you are getting proper recovery. And that's what allows you to make the change. So think of it this way. Intensity sends the signal, right? The stimulus, the signal. Recovery is where the body actually responds to that signal. That's where it builds muscle. That's where it's able to adapt metabolically. That's where it's able to get stronger and become more resilient. Without that recovery in place, the signal just gets sent and nothing gets built. And that's where a lot of women are investing a lot of effort, a lot of time, but not getting that return. So for women in, again, perimenopause, postmenopause especially, where that hormonal stress buffer is thinner, that's where recovery does take longer. If you've noticed that for yourself, that's it's not in your head. It is a thing. It does take longer. Cortisol is going to stay more elevated more easily. And that's why recovery is not optional. It needs to be a part of the overall strategy. And it literally is the thing that determines whether your training produces results or fatigue. Now, when it comes to recovery, there are other things that go into that, right? It's not just like taking a rest day. It's not, like the nutrition is a big piece of it too. That's like 90% of the recovery strategy. But the question shouldn't be like, how much harder do I need to train? How much harder do I need to push? The question often becomes, do I have the recovery infrastructure in place to handle the intensity and to benefit from the training that I'm doing? And that's where, like, for a lot of women, it's just wrapping our heads around, right? Of like the idea of like, I don't have to rest so that, like, I don't have to wait to feel tired to rest. I need to rest so that I could keep training and keep pushing. And that way you're recovering, so your training actually works, actually benefits you. Recovery is not the opposite of intensity. It's the prerequisite for it. Now, what does that look like when it comes to recovery? This is something that for a lot of women, they think like, okay, well, like Alexis, like I'm going to go crazy just like sitting and doing nothing. First of all, if you're a woman in my community, there's probably like zero time and you're always doing something. So that's probably not even possible. But it also doesn't look like just like sitting on the couch all day and like resting, right? Like there's again, we want to protect your training frequency. So more in this case is not better, especially in perimenopause and menopause. More effort does not equal more results or better results. Like I said before, 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week with genuine recovery between them. And the strength training, like I said, 30, 40 minutes. If you have less time, it's possible too. But with the genuine recovery between them produces better results than 5 sessions a week that you're never fully recovering from. And each major muscle group needs about at least 48 hours to 72 hours of recovery before being trained again at high intensity. So that's not like just a suggestion that I'm throwing out there. It's how muscle building, muscle protein synthesis actually works. And training the same muscle before it's fully recovered doesn't make it stronger faster. It just keeps it in that state of damage, and there's not enough time to help it repair. So if you're training more than 3 times a week, and I'm saying like high intensity, strength, like quality workouts, and you're feeling chronically sore, you're feeling fatigued, or just kind of like flat, that's not a sign that you need to push through and push harder. That's a sign that your recovery isn't keeping up with your training load. And the fix is almost never pushing through or more training. It's less and a different type of training strategy and recovery strategy. So that's the first thing, is protecting your training frequency, your training volume, making sure that you're focusing on quality over quantity. Now, the second thing is fueling for your training. Mainly, again, before and after becomes really, really key, especially if you are going through the menopause transition. Your body does become more sensitive to under eating. So under fueling is honestly one of the most common recovery mistakes or lack of that I see in the women that come to us at first. A lot of women that we speak to, they're like, I eat healthy, I focus on good quality food, I'm eating like super well, I'm training consistently, my body is just stuck, I don't think there's anything that can be done, like it's, whatever, like I've tried all these different things. And almost like 95% of the time, it's a training and fueling mismatch, but mainly like unintentionally under fueling for a lot of women. So if you're training fasted, or you're very low carb, or you're trying to stay low carb, these things elevate cortisol during the session. So your body has no readily available fuel to use. And again, it perceives your workout at a higher, like it perceives that at a higher threat. So recovery from that session is slower afterwards, and the muscle building signal gets blunted because it just doesn't have the right resources to actually build muscle and produce that adaptation. So that's where when it comes to like eating before, even if it's like a small amount of protein or a sip of something, with a bit of protein, like a iced protein coffee, or like you're sipping on it a bit before, like you don't want to have a full-blown meal if you only have like a half an hour before you work out, or a bit of like some carbohydrate before training. And making sure that you're getting adequate protein afterwards. A lot of the women that we talk to, they're like, I'm fasted in the morning because I work out first thing in the morning, and then I run out to work, and then like I don't feel hungry, so like my first meal's at 11 a.m. But yet they wake up at 6, they're fasted during their workout, and then they're fasted afterwards. That's where, like, before training, a bit of fuel gives your body permission to push hard without triggering that stress response. And after training, that's really key, because the protein is going to provide the building blocks, the amino acids that your muscles actually need to recover from, and adapt and repair. So without those two, you're essentially putting in all this work, all this effort, without giving your body what it needs to respond to it. So again, that's where it just becomes a bit more intentional in terms of how you're piecing everything in together, integrating everything in together. Now, the third thing is protecting your sleep. So especially around training days, sleep is really the foundation for everything else, right? But sleep, when it comes to like muscle building, gains, all that, your growth hormone is the primary driver of muscle repair. And it's released in its largest pulse during the slow wave deep sleep. So if your sleep is disrupted, that release of growth hormone gets blunted. And that means that like the training session that you did, whether it was that day, the day before, produced a signal, right? A stimulus, but then your body couldn't fully respond to it overnight, couldn't fully recover from it overnight. So for women in perimenopause, postmenopause especially, where slow wave deep sleep is already, sometimes, not everybody's case, but most of the time, it is already being disrupted by night sweats or cortisol dysregulation, which again, that's another story too. It goes back to like how you're eating throughout the day, all that. There's always a way of going about it. It's not your hormones that's causing all this. It just means you have to change things. But all these things, like protecting your sleep quality, is one of the highest leverage things that you could do. It's one of the highest leverage recovery tools available. So simple things, cool dark room, magnesium before bed, consistent sleep timing, waking up at the same time every day, going to bed at the same time. If you are drinking alcohol, finishing alcohol at least 3 hours before you sleep, so it doesn't disrupt that first phase, especially. And these are all recovery tactics that directly affect how your body is going to respond to that training. So that's 3. And the last one, actually, there's 2 more. So number 4 is we want to manage your stress load. So again, it's not just training stress, but your HPA axis doesn't distinguish between training stress and overall life stress. So if you're having a really busy week, a brutal week at work, or you're having things going on in your personal life, a difficult personal situation, or you're having chronic poor sleep, all of these things draw from that same stress buffer as you're training. So when you have a week where life is just at a very maximum capacity, that might not be the week where you want to, push through your hardest training session. That looks like a week where you'd want to adjust. And that's exactly what we do for our one-on-one clients, is like, we're here to adjust, adapt, depending on what else is going on. And it's not an excuse to skip training, right? Like training when life gets hard, it's not an excuse to just skip and avoid it. It just looks a little different. And it's just a reason to go about it differently. And mainly around like the training load relative to everything else that's going on in your life or in your body. So on high stress weeks, you want to drop it down a bit, right? So like, let's say you're working out 3 times a week, maybe do 2, maybe shorten the duration, shorter sessions, slightly lower intensity, full, like keep prioritizing your recovery and keep protecting your sleep, right? Like you still show up, you still send the signal, but you just do it in a way where your recovery capacity can actually support it. And the last thing, the 5th one, when it comes to recovery tactics, is using the low intensity movement as active recovery, not more training. So this is where like a lot of women, they're like, I'm constantly doing something, right? Like it's like, whether they're like, okay, like I'm going to do strength, but then I'm also going to go for like a run and like cycling, but then they go like really hard with it. You want to purposely plan out your active recovery days. So walking, gentle cycling, swimming, yoga, mobility work, whatever the case, like these are not, these are not prizes for days you didn't train hard. They are purposely scheduled in, purposely programmed in, because they're active recovery tools that are going to help support your circulation. They're going to help support your, again, your nervous system, getting it back into that like rest and digest state, that parasympathetic state. They're going to help with cortisol clearance. Like they help your body move out of that like fight or flight state and into that recovery state. So the mistake is either like you either treat these as real training or doing nothing. And that's where like active recovery really look at as like a third category. And for women who are, if you're going through perimenopause or you are postmenopausal already, they are as important as the actual training week and the intensity sessions themselves. So that's really where you want to treat it as part of the overall strategy, not just something you do because you feel like you need it or like you wait till you feel like you need it. So here's what I want you to like walk away with today. Again, that was like a lot of, different pieces, but basically what we talked about is again, intensity is not the enemy, right? First of all, avoiding intensity is not the answer. And neither is hammering yourself with a bunch of high intensity or more of it when your body is already struggling to recover. You feel like your body's not responding. The answer is just different, right? Doing it differently, doing it smarter, purposeful. And like when I say doing it smarter, it's doing it more intentionally, right? And purposeful strength training that takes your muscles close to failure, short sprint intervals that actually maintain your fast twitch muscle fibers without chronically spiking the cortisol, and making sure they have that recovery infrastructure, right? So sleep, fueling, your stress management, your training frequency, making sure that it gives your body what it actually needs versus, pulling it away from the work that you're doing, right? So you don't, again, the mindset reframe that I want you to leave with today is you don't earn recovery, you build it in, right? And you build it first to earn the intensity. Because then that way the intensity, the work that you're putting in actually gets used the way it's supposed to. And if you're there now and you're listening to this, you're thinking, like, okay, like this, I understand this concept, but I don't know what's missing, what my formula should look like, what my specific training, my recovery picture should actually look like right now. That's exactly what we focus on. That's exactly what we build within our one-on-one coaching program with you specifically. It's not a generic plan. There's many things that go into it beyond like what you're eating, how you're training. It's very much a full design, looking at you as a full human with a full life, and a full picture designed around your biology, your hormonal stage, what's going on in your life. So if you are wanting to dive into that, see, like, just have a conversation about where you're at now, what this looks like for you, what could be improved, I'm always happy to have that discussion. You could just comment the word recover below and I'll reach out to you personally to learn more about your situation and see if we're the right team to help you. So, and if there's anybody, like, as you're watching this, you're like, you know what, I have a friend, I have a family member, like somebody who needs to hear this, especially one who has maybe been told to stop training so hard, or the opposite, maybe somebody who's really, really training hard and going crazy and, they're not seeing results and they're wondering why, just share this with them. You never know how it can help them and what they get out of it. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Let me know if you have any questions about this or anything else. I'm going to just check quickly. I don't see any comments, but after I refresh, it usually pops up. So let me know if you guys have any questions about